Okay, so this is Qynne here, and I did chapter 10 of Bolman and Deal, which is the manager as a politician. And the first thing I wanted to talk about, or I guess put on this first slide, was that self interest from powerful execs can bring down huge corporations, which then begs the question, should politics be removed from management? And according to Bolman and Deal, this is unrealistic because enduring differences lead to multiple interpretations no matter what this happens. Scarce resources trigger contests, and interdependence means that people cannot ignore one another. Um, and then I pulled this quote from Cotter in 1985, which states that organizational excellence demands a sophisticated type of social skill, a leadership skill that can mobilize people and accomplish important tasks despite dozens of obstacles, a skill that can pull people together for meaningful purposes despite the thousands of forces that push apart, a skill that can keep our corporations and public institutions from descending into mediocrity characterized by bureaucratic infighting, parochial politics, and vicious power struggles. So on the next slide, these are the 4 skills that Bolman and Deal think are important for us to know as politicians, managers as politicians. And they are agenda setting, mapping the political terrain, networking and building coalitions, and finally, bargaining and negotiations. So first we go into agenda setting. Structurally, this is an outline where we outline a goal and a schedule of activities, but politically, this is a statement of interests and a scenario for getting the goods. Um, then they talk about an agenda for change, which is a vision balancing the long-term interests of key parties, so all of your key stakeholders, for example. And then it's also a strategy for achieving the vision while recognizing competing internal and external forces. So they ask us, and actually I pulled these 2 things because I thought they were really important. And because Bolman and Deal tell us to get to know stakeholders to develop an agenda rooted in their needs and concerns. And that just reminds me of being a political manager in schools. We need to make sure that all of our stakeholders are kept in our minds as we develop these agendas. So everyone, students, teachers, staff of all kinds, community members, and even upper management. And then they talk about this idea of sensitivity, so knowing how others think and what they care about, so your agenda responds to their concerns. And they talk about how important that is for a political manager. Okay, the next part is mapping the political terrain, so this kind of entails 4 pieces here: determining channels of informal communication, identifying principal agents of political influence, analyzing possibilities for mobilizing internal and external players, and finally, anticipating counter strategies that others are likely to employ. And so one of the suggestions from Bolman and Deal is to make a political map, like the one you see below, which I pulled straight from the book, pages 212 to 213. And so what you do is you're diagramming your players, so who's in the game. You're looking at how much power they have, what power will they exercise, and then finally, what are their interests? So how badly do they want whatever it is you're aiming for to really happen? And so on the left, you see they gave this example of these techies. I don't know, I can't really remember who they were, but where they thought the players sort of lined up, but then on the right, it's where they were in actuality. And so that was really important because I think that they ran into some problems because they thought people were going to be on their side or had more power or less power, and it turns out it was not as they anticipated. So they suggest doing this as a political manager. Next, we're looking at networking and building coalitions. So there's 4 parts to this: identifying relevant relationships, figure out which players need to influence, assess who might resist, why would they resist, and how strongly. So determine where the leadership challenges will be. Develop wherever possible links with potential opponents to facilitate communication, education, or negotiation. So keep your enemies close. If step 3 fails, carefully select and implement either more subtle or more forceful methods. Save your potent weapons until you really need them, but have a plan B in case plan A falls short. So in other words, I guess they also talked about, so what's sort of your line of support here? Where do you go first? And so we look on the left, you look at how excited she is for you. Get your boss on your team, make sure that they're understanding what you're trying to get done and that you've got their support. Then you go out and you find cheerleaders. Who are those people that you know are going to support your agenda? and then really get them on board by next. You'll see this very happy horse who this is called horse trading. So when you have your cheerleaders, it's essentially when you promise rewards by the cheerleaders then giving you resources and support. So you're that's horse trading, promising rewards to your cheerleaders um, for their support and resources. And then finally, the last thing you do is that once you have this foundational group who's backing you, you go into this securing blessings phase where the upper management actually then would be on your side, and especially if they see uh, the support you've already built. This is just a funny cartoon explaining horse trading. So the guy on the left is the political manager trying to get people on board with him. Okay, the third part is bargaining and negotiation, which is the difference between creating value and claiming value. So value creators believe that successful negotiators must be inventive and cooperative and searching for a win-win. And value claimers see win-win as naively optimistic. For them, bargaining is very difficult to do, and you just win as much as you can. There's not really the option of, oh, everybody going away happy. Principled bargaining, which is on page 216, talks about separate people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, invent options for mutual gain instead of locking in on the first alternative that comes to mind, and insisting on objective criteria, standards of fairness for both substance and procedures. And then I ask you this question related to number one: what are strategies you use to focus on the task at hand? Or in other words, how do you separate people from the problem when you are bargaining? I'll let you think about that. Please pause if you need to. Okay, and the last piece for chapter 10 here talked about morality and politics. And I liked this quote that said, the line between positive and negative politics is a tightrope we have to walk. So for the people who are against you, these adversary, I never know how to say that word. Anyway, people against you or will question you. First, you're going to tell them your vision, state your best understanding of their position, and identify your contribution to the problem, and finally telling them what you plan to do without making demands. And so again, these were really, for me, I think I'm going to keep these around because I think whenever I get into a sticky situation, I think if I ask myself these questions, I will know what is right or wrong or good or bad. And so I would recommend for you to keep these questions handy as well, especially when you're kind of sitting with a tough decision in front of you. So are you following rules that are mutually understood and accepted? Are you comfortable discussing and defending your choices? Would you want to be on the receiving end of your actions? Would the world be better or worse if everyone acted as you did? And are there alternatives you could consider that rest on firmer ethical ground? So, good questions to keep in mind. That is the end of chapter 10, and you will now go into Mike's presentation on chapter 11, I believe. Okay, thank you. Qynne is out.